From secret vows to jaw-dropping spectacles, these gay celebrity weddings turned love into a revolution. Scandalous, stunning, iconic. And if you believe queer love deserves to shine this loud, smash that like, hit subscribe, and drop a comment. Which wedding left you speechless? Because when queer love takes the spotlight, it is never just a wedding, it is a global event. Olympic gold meets Oscar gold when Tom Daley and Dustin Lance Black joined forces. British Olympic diver Tom Daley first came out in a heartfelt YouTube video in 2013. He captured the world's attention not only for his bravery, but for his honesty. What followed was one of the most high-profile LGBTQ+ love stories in the public eye, but few knew just how iconic and surprising his romance with Oscar-winning screenwriter Dustin Lance Black would become. At first glance, their pairing raised eyebrows. Tom, a 19-year-old rising sports star, and Dustin, a 39-year-old American filmmaker famous for Milk, the biopic of gay rights icon Harvey Milk. Their age difference caused a media frenzy, with critics questioning motives, authenticity, and everything in between. But love has a way of silencing cynics, and these two proved just that. Despite the constant spotlight, Tom and Dustin chose depth over drama. Their relationship quietly evolved away from the headlines. And in 2017, they shocked the world by announcing they had secretly tied the knot at Bovey Castle in Devon, England. It was not just a wedding. It was a cinematic moment. Two men who had conquered separate arenas, now vowing to face the world together. The wedding itself was grand, elegant, and deeply symbolic. Tom wore a bespoke, deep blue suit. Dustin wore a classic tuxedo. They exchanged vows beneath a sweeping floral arch, surrounded by close friends, family, and those who had stood by them through the firestorm. It was intimate, yet revolutionary. A global symbol of how far LGBTQ+ visibility had come. But the true impact came later. Tom and Dustin did not just want a wedding. They wanted a family. In 2018, they welcomed their son Robbie by surrogacy, and once again, headlines exploded. Critics called their decision controversial. Some questioned their parenting. Others attacked them simply for existing as two men raising a child. But Tom and Dustin never flinched. Instead, they responded with grace, resilience, and a level of transparency that continues to inspire. From Instagram photos of bedtime stories to heartfelt interviews about navigating parenthood as gay dads, they shattered stereotypes with quiet strength. Today, they are not just husbands. They are fathers, advocates, and global symbols of queer success. This was not just a wedding, it was a revolution. In a castle. It reminded the world that LGBTQ+ love is not just about visibility, it is about legacy. Drop an A if you believe love, no matter what it looks like, deserves a standing ovation. Lance Bass was once the face on every teenage girl's bedroom wall. As 1/5 of NSYNC, he danced through sold-out stadiums, platinum records, and the fever dream of early 2000s pop. But behind the fame, the frosted tips, and the synchronized moves, Lance was hiding a truth that the music industry had no room for. He was gay, and he was terrified. For years he kept quiet, convinced that honesty would cost him everything. But in 2006, he finally spoke up and shook the world. One of the most recognizable faces in pop had just stepped out of the closet. It was not just a personal revelation, it was a cultural earthquake. And yet, Lance was only getting started. In 2011, a chance encounter with actor and visual artist Michael Turchin sparked something new. What began as playful banter quickly evolved into a love story no one could script. In 2014, they made history, again by saying "I do" in front of millions, becoming the first same-sex couple to marry on cable television. Their wedding aired on E!, turning prime time into pride time, and proving that queer love belonged not just in the shadows, but in the spotlight. But the beauty of their story was in the details. Tuxedo-clad groomsmaids, a black and white cake shaped like a tux, celebrities raising glasses under the Park Plaza Hotel's golden chandeliers. And instead of a bridal march, they walked the aisle to harmonies reminiscent of Lance's boy band days. It was not just a wedding, it was a statement. Still, their path was far from smooth. The headlines kept coming, so did the whispers and internet trolls. But instead of backing away, Lance and Michael leaned in, with humor, honesty, and resilience. They were not just surviving Hollywood, they were rewriting the rules of queer visibility within it. Then in 2021, came another milestone. After years of fertility struggles, they welcomed twins via surrogate. Their social media became a window into a world rarely shown. Two dads, bleary-eyed from midnight feedings, laughing through the chaos, loving out loud. It was not performative, it was powerful. Because their legacy is not built on tabloid moments or viral clips. It is built on authenticity, on choosing each other again and again, on showing the next generation that you can be loud, proud, in love, and in sync with who you truly are. Lance Bass did not just come out, he came through, boldly, beautifully, and arm in arm with Michael Turchin. And in doing so, they turned a love story into a revolution, one glitter-covered step at a time. They never set out to become icons. But somewhere between the Broadway lights, red carpets, and bedtime stories, Neil Patrick Harris and David Burtka quietly redefined what a modern queer family could look like. Neil, sharp-witted, endlessly charming, a household name since his teen years, met David in the early 2000s. David was an actor-turned-chef, grounded, warm, and equally creative. Their connection was instant. They were not just dating, they were building something rare. A partnership rooted in balance, humor, and mutual respect. Years before same-sex marriage was legal, Neil and David were already living as a family. In 2010, they welcomed twins via surrogacy, Harper and Gideon, and opened their world to the public in a way that felt real, not rehearsed. Whether it was sharing Halloween costumes, heartfelt birthday wishes, or the occasional behind-the-scenes parenting moment, they gave visibility to queer fatherhood with charm and grace. But their relationship was never about performance. It was about being present for each other and for their children. In 2014, they married in a quiet ceremony in Italy. Elton John performed. Their kids were there. It was not flashy. It was meaningful. It was everything a wedding should be, a reflection of who they were. And perhaps that is what makes their love story so powerful. They did not chase headlines. They built a home. They did not seek applause, they raised a family, and through it all, they remained grounded, balancing fame with fatherhood, activism with authenticity. Neil and David remind us that queer love does not need to shout to be heard. Sometimes it just needs to show up, again and again, with honesty, patience, and joy. Theirs is not just a story of love. It is a quiet revolution, lived out in real time, in front of millions, without losing a single ounce of sincerity. Jim Parsons and Todd Spiewak. Before the red carpets, before the Emmy wins, and long before the world came to know him as the genius Sheldon Cooper, Jim Parsons had already discovered something far more meaningful than fame: love. In the early 2000s, he met Todd Spiewak, a talented graphic designer whose creativity and calm presence would soon become the quiet heartbeat of Jim's life. While Jim's career climbed to impossible heights, their relationship stayed rooted in something refreshingly normal. No headlines, no grand gestures. Just two men navigating life together. One coffee, one evening walk, one inside joke at a time. And in a city like Los Angeles, where relationships often burn fast and fade quicker, theirs endured in silence and strength. What made their story so inspiring was not just its longevity, but its intentional simplicity. For years, they kept their relationship away from the flashing cameras, not because they were hiding, but because they did not need the world's validation. Jim once said it was not an act of activism, just an act of love. But that very normalcy became a quiet kind of revolution. It was a reminder to anyone watching, especially those in the LGBTQ+ community, that you do not need to put on a show for your love to be real. In fact, the gentlest stories often carry the deepest power. In a culture that sometimes confuses volume with value, Jim and Todd showed us what intimacy truly looks like: patient, honest, and beautifully understated. After more than 14 years of loving quietly, they made a public promise. In May 2017, they were married at the Rainbow Room in New York City, surrounded by close friends, laughter, and a sense of deep, earned joy. It was not a media circus, but a celebration of something enduring. Their wedding was not about making headlines. It was about closing a circle that had always been complete in private. And yet, for queer people around the world, especially those who live quietly or love behind closed doors, it meant everything. Jim and Todd did not just redefine what a gay celebrity wedding could look like. They redefined what lasting, real love looks like when it does not need to prove itself to anyone. Ricky Martin and Jwan Yosef. For decades, Ricky Martin was the living embodiment of Latin pop. Hips that hypnotized, songs that ignited global charts, and a charisma that made millions swoon. But behind the thunderous applause and dazzling performances was a secret quietly weighing on him. At the height of his fame in the late 1990s and early 2000s, Ricky was adored across continents, especially by conservative Latin fans. But being openly gay? That was unthinkable. Tabloids speculated, whispers followed him, yet he remained silent, afraid the truth would destroy everything he had built. That silence lasted nearly 20 years until one day in 2010, he posted a simple but powerful sentence. "I am proud to say that I am a fortunate homosexual man." And just like that, the world leaned in, not to judge, but to celebrate. Then came the next chapter, one that felt less like a publicity moment and more like a page from a heartfelt novel. In 2016, Ricky announced his engagement to Jwan Yosef, a Syrian-Swedish artist he had met on Instagram. What started as a conversation about art soon bloomed into something deeper, an authentic connection between two souls from different worlds. Jwan, soft-spoken and introspective, offered the perfect counterbalance to Ricky's larger-than-life energy. While one lit up arenas, the other painted in quiet corners of the world. Their love was not loud. It was honest. And in 2018, they quietly married in a private ceremony. No cameras, no headlines, just love. When Ricky casually confirmed the wedding months later, it was not the secrecy that stunned people, it was the humility. Two gay men, not just surviving in the spotlight, but thriving in the quiet of their shared life. Together, they raised 4 beautiful children, a pair of twin boys, a daughter, and a son, choosing to parent with fierce grace and visible pride. They appeared hand in hand on red carpets and let fans peek into their vibrant, loving household through glimpses on social media. But as groundbreaking as their story was, it was not free from backlash. In a culture still wrestling with queer visibility, especially within the Latin world, Ricky and Jwan faced homophobia, judgment, and even public attacks questioning their fitness as parents. Yet they held their ground, and when they announced their amicable separation in 2023, it was with the same dignity that defined their union. No bitterness, just gratitude for the years, the love, the legacy. They did not just have a wedding. They built a movement, one where art, identity, and queer family were lived out loud. If Ricky and Jwan's story opened your eyes to what love can look like today, drop a 1. Because this was not just a romance, it was a revolution. They were never just a couple. They were a revolution wrapped in a tuxedo and a piano key. Long before the United Kingdom legalized same-sex marriage, before most people could even imagine 2 men standing at the altar without shame or fear, Sir Elton John was already living unapologetically. Sequins, feathers, and fierce authenticity. It was all there, center stage. But even amid sold-out world tours and a knighthood from the Queen, one thing had always eluded him: a lasting, grounding kind of love. That changed in 1993 when he met David Furnish, a sharp-dressed Canadian filmmaker with quiet strength and a soul deep enough to hold Elton's fire. From their first dinner party, something shifted. The flamboyant showman and the measured storyteller became a perfect contradiction, fueling a love story that would eventually change the world. In 2005, they made headlines, not for music, but for marriage. On the very first day civil partnerships became legal in the United Kingdom, Elton and David signed their names into history. Flashbulbs popped, crowds cheered, but this was more than just a photo op. It was a seismic moment for LGBTQ+ visibility. Then, nearly a decade later, when full marriage equality arrived in 2014, they did it again, with their 2 sons by their side and a ceremony that was equal parts elegant and rebellious. But beyond the glamour, their love became activism. Together, they built the Elton John AIDS Foundation, raising over $500 million and forcing governments, industries, and culture itself to pay attention. While most celebrity couples fade into the noise, Elton and David turned their love into a megaphone for change. It was not always easy. but it was always real. David was often cast as the quiet one in Elton's glittering shadow. Rumors swirled, headlines questioned, critics whispered. Yet through it all, they stood firm. No scandals, no public meltdowns, just years of evolving, growing, and building a life with intention and heart. Today, they are more than music and red carpets. They are queer royalty. Two sons raised with compassion, a home filled with authenticity. A legacy that says love between two men is not just valid, it is timeless. From your song to I'm Still Standing, Elton has always given us anthems of the heart. But with David, he did more than sing about love. He showed us how to live it. Drop a 1 if you believe their love story deserves its own standing ovation. Colton Haynes and Jeff Leatham. When Colton Haynes and Jeff Leatham announced their engagement in 2017, it felt like a plot twist out of a Hollywood romance. Colton, the magnetic star of Teen Wolf and Arrow, had spent years keeping his private life behind a velvet curtain. He was the silent crush on every fan's wall, the brooding athlete in every fantasy. So when he publicly came out and then immediately revealed his engagement to celebrity floral designer Jeff Leatham, the world did a double take. Jeff, known for creating lavish displays for icons like Oprah and the Kardashians, orchestrated a Paris proposal that could have been a scene from a movie, complete with fireworks and even a video message from Cher herself. It was bold, it was glamorous, it was gay love, loud and proud. Their wedding later that year became a landmark moment in LGBTQ+ visibility. Held in Palm Springs, lit by hundreds of candles and witnessed by celebrity friends, the ceremony radiated intimacy and elegance. Matching suits, tearful vows, hand in hand down the aisle. It was more than a wedding, it was a message. A message that queer love stories deserve the same sparkle, the same headlines, and the same fairy tale treatment the world so often reserves for others. For a moment, their union felt like the culmination of a long-fought dream. Visibility, acceptance, and celebration all blooming under a California sky. But fairy tales do not always end with forever. Less than a year later, whispers of a breakup filled the tabloids, and by mid-2018, the divorce was official. The sudden unraveling left fans stunned. Colton opened up about deep grief, personal loss, and the emotional toll fame had taken. His mother's passing cast a shadow over what should have been a honeymoon period. Jeff, for his part, quietly stepped out of the spotlight, and yet, through it all, they showed grace. No scandal, no drama, just two men letting go, gently. Their love may not have lasted, but its beauty did. It reminded us that queer love can be just as rich, just as real, and even in its brevity, just as unforgettable. Wanda Sykes and Alex Niedbalski. Wanda Sykes never needed a stage to make a statement. Her wit alone could stop a room. But in 2008, she made a different kind of headline. At a rally protesting California's Proposition 8, Wanda came out publicly, not for applause, but for truth. It was a bold move in a time when many celebrities still stayed silent. But Wanda, with her razor-sharp humor and fearless honesty, decided it was time the world knew who she really was. That same year, she married Alex Niedbalski, a poised and elegant Frenchwoman she had met years earlier on a ferry ride. What started with a conversation about granite countertops turned into a lifelong partnership. While Wanda's comedic timing was loud and unmissable, her love story with Alex played out quietly, but just as powerfully. Alex may not come from the spotlight, but she quickly became Wanda's grounding force. Their relationship was never about glitz or gossip. It was about shared glances, inside jokes, and building a life together away from the Hollywood frenzy. In 2009, they welcomed twins, and just like that, Wanda's world expanded. She once joked that she went from being a stand-up comic to standing up all night with babies. But behind the punchlines was real joy. Wanda embraced motherhood with humor and heart, while Alex brought calm and wisdom to the chaos. Together, they built a home filled with laughter, love, and French-English banter. Their family became a living, breathing example of what queer love could look like. Strong, simple, and deeply nurturing. In an entertainment world that often demands spectacle, Wanda and Alex chose substance. They did not shout their love from rooftops, but they never hid it either. And that quiet visibility has become its own form of activism. one that speaks volumes to queer women and families across the world. Whether on stage, in interviews, or simply walking hand in hand, Wanda and Alex remind us that love does not need to be loud to be revolutionary. It just needs to be real. Their story proves that two women, building a family together, can be just as iconic, inspiring, and world-changing as any fairy tale ever told. From royal ceremonies to whirlwind romances, these weddings did more than trend. They made history. In a world that once silenced queer love, these couples stood tall, radiant, and unapologetically in love. They gave hope, sparked change, and reminded us that the most powerful love stories are not the ones that follow the rules. They are the ones brave enough to break them. Like, subscribe, and tell us, which wedding moved you the most?